Hello, neighbors. Today we will talk about Beyond the Stigma, Black Voices on Mental Health. Today is with us Jordan Scott. Hello, Jordan. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm great. Taylor Davis, of course, is here too. She works here in Neighbors Consejo. Taylor, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking.
Great. Jordan, please let us know something about you, about your organization.
Sure. So I am Jordan Scott. I am the co-founder of Black People Die by Suicide too. We are a nonprofit organization that seeks to break the stigma around mental health and suicide in the Black community. We provide resources for individuals who are looking to find connection. And most importantly, we instill hope in people who would otherwise feel that suicide is the only way out. I'm really excited to be here talking with you all today. As a person who has been impacted by mental health conditions and feeling suicidal, I think this is a very important conversation for us to have.
Sure, Jordan. To start with our conversation, how do you define mental health in your own words?
So mental health is more than meets the eye. I think when people think of what it means to have good mental health, they just look at the emotional impact, but it's also, I guess, a combination of factors, if you will, that will determine how well an individual is able to show up as they want to in the world and to feel comfortable and to feel safe and to live a productive and happy life. So it's a combination of not just how you're doing emotionally, but also physically. Is your physical health where you would like it to be? Do you have the energy to do the things that you would love to do? How is your spiritual health? Your finances, do you have a little bit more month than you do money at the end of the month? Because I know that could definitely impact your mental health. How do you feel about your relationships? Are they fulfilling? Are they satisfying? And even with emotions, are you able to withstand the stressors of daily life? Or do you have access or even the ability to tap into some tools and resources to help you do that? So there's lots of different factors that will go into someone's overall mental health, but it's your state of well-being, how able you are to care for your daily responsibilities and also find fulfillment and joy in life.
Yes, absolutely. So Jordan, do you think mental health is openly discussed in the Black community?
No, not as much
Why?
as it should
Why
be.
not?
You know what? I think that the conversation became more open once we went through the pandemic. I think overall, collectively, we experienced this sense of grief and worry that kind of brought us together as a nation. And even as Black people, I think it made it easier for mental health and depression and anxiety to be understood. However, I think even now, it's not something that we tend to associate with our community. Definitely not suicidality. That doesn't happen in our community. Even when people do pass away from suicide, there tends to be a lot of conspiracy around it. That person must have died from something else, not suicide. So I think the mental health conversation definitely has a long way to go in our community, but I foresee it getting better over time.
Yes.
Jordan, what are some common misconceptions about mental health in the Black community?
That if you need help outside of yourself or even outside of church, that you're crazy, that you're weak, that somehow that makes you less than. There's this pressure to always be strong and be resourceful in the face of anything that goes on in our lives. And even the thought that I would need to talk to someone else, that goes against the number one rule in the Black community. What happens in this house stays in this house. You don't tell outside people your business. That stays in the family. And no, we have to change that. I think that there's so many resources and opportunities for us to actually talk about our mental health that it shouldn't be something that you feel guilty or bad about pursuing, because it will only enhance your life and make things better and make those stressors easier to deal with. But, there's the misconception that if you need help, that you're failing in some way. There's a moral failure. It's sinful in some way. Lots of things that I think would keep people away from seeking help.
Yes. So I read that, and correct me if I'm wrong, this organization was founded by you, and can you pronounce her name for me?
Takia.
Takia. Okay, thank you. And you both shared the experience of either suicidal ideation. So based upon that, obviously, I will assume that you face mental health challenges. So what were your main barriers to seeking help?
Yeah, so a little fun fact about us before I answer the question. Takia and I actually met in the hospital, one of the hospitals here in Maryland. We were both seeking treatment for suicidal ideation at the same time. So we were in a day program together, and that's where we met and became friends. And Takia had the idea to start this organization because we talk about mental health amongst each other all the time. But we found that when we try to have these conversations with people other than us, there's always this like, whoa, what do you mean? Depression? Like, that does not happen in our community. So we thought it would be helpful to bring these private conversations that we have public, to kind of raise awareness and let people know that, hey, Black and depressed, we're out here, and we're working through it. We're in recovery, and we're working to thrive as best we can.
Yes.
Definitely some barriers. Oh my gosh. The perception of my family. I was so terrified. The first time I was hospitalized, I was an undergrad in Georgia, and my mother came down from Maryland the next day after I was inpatient. And I remember her coming into the room and looking at me like, Jordan, this is so stupid. Like, she could not believe it. Even when I was first there, I know Takia had a similar experience. We were in the hospital and we were like, we don't belong here. Like, we're not like these people. I was so concerned about the perception of others and what people would think of me if I needed mental health treatment. Because again, it went against everything that I was taught. My parents are baby boomers. So they're from that generation where they saw people who struggle with mental health and they went to institutions or asylums. And I think there was the fear that that's what the experience would be like for me. But I actually had pretty positive experiences while I was inpatient. So that actually surprised me. I think I was also concerned about cost. At the time, I was on my mother's commercial insurance, and I will never forget this. This was back in 2012. For me to see my primary care doctor, my copay was just $10. But for me to see a therapist every time, it was $85 a session. That was my copay, just like off the top before things even got billed. So, more money would be paid down the line. I was concerned about the cost, what my mother would have to pay out of pocket for me going to therapy. Not to mention just what I thought would be an immense amount of shame put on me from other people for needing help. But I think that ultimately being in treatment was probably one of the best things that ever happened to me.
Jordan, you and your partner founded this organization that is Black People Die by Suicide too. As we discussed, you both shared this difficult topic that is suicide. And it's one of many, many other hard to talk about topics as stress, anxiety, depression, and in our daily life. How you cope with these situations?
You know what? One thing that I'm very, very proud of with me and Takia, we are not clinical mental health professionals. So we don't diagnose, we don't provide therapy. We're actually peer support specialists, which means that we're people with lived experience with either a mental health disorder, substance use, or both. And we use our lived experience in recovery along with additional training and a certification process to help other people who are currently struggling. So the cool thing about us is that we're still in recovery too. If you're struggling, we're right there with you. I totally understand. Full disclosure, at the time of this interview, y'all, I am in an intensive outpatient program. I'm constantly working on my recovery. That's one of the ways in which I am dealing with depression and anxiety symptoms. But also on a day-to-day basis, I try to do things that kind of bring me joy and like make me feel creative and productive. So I've been learning how to crochet. That's been very, very soothing. Something about the repetition of motion just feels very soothing to me. I try to make sure that I get enough water daily, that I take my medication daily, that I get a little something to eat, because some of my medications work a heck of a lot better when I have something in my stomach. Taking my dog out for a walk, just going outside and experiencing nature. I think the idea of self-care and what it means to soothe yourself when you're feeling depressed or anxious. We have this glamorized idea of like going out and getting your nails done and your hair done and getting a massage, going to the spa. And those things are fantastic, don't get me wrong. But self-care can be so simple. Making sure you're getting enough water. That's huge for me. Making sure I'm staying in contact with my therapist. If I need a higher level of care, I'm going to pursue it. I'm in IOP right now and it's going great so far. This is my second week. Y'all wish me luck.
Nice.
Yeah, so these are definitely things that I do. I know for my co-founder, Takia, she's very big on exercising. She will get up really early in the morning and she'll have like 2 hours that she takes for herself to just read, to journal, to meditate. And that's like her time to just be with herself and just decompress. So it doesn't have to be complicated.
Right. Before, I ask this next question, I do want to say thank you so much for being just very transparent and open about what you've experienced. So I really appreciate that. So with that being said, have you ever felt stigmatized when discussing mental health issues? You did briefly touch upon it, but I just want to kind of emphasize that.
Yes, 1 sec.
And to follow the idea that Taylor have, it's important to know that mental health is about having a good life in our daily activities. As Jordan say, like meditation, having a good diet, do exercise, talk with others. That's about mental health and having a good mental well-being with me and with the others too. I think that is a very important point.
Stigma. I remember when I first went into treatment, my family members telling me, you don't need that. They were so against me taking medication, which I kind of understand because there's been some history between African Americans and the medical system with experimentation with medications and whatnot. So there was always a fear with me being on meds. My mom still doesn't like it. Sorry, but I think it's very, very important that I take my medication. It definitely supports my depressive symptoms and my anxiety. I've even experienced struggles at work. I had a job that was going so well. And for whatever reason, at the beginning of the year, every year, January is a particularly triggering time of year for me. And I was in the running for this particular job position because I was doing so well. It was like a contract job where I would go into DC public schools and administer assessments to their preschool children. They wanted to know how well their preschool programming was effective. So they contracted this company to do the assessments and report back to DC. And I was in the running for a full-time position. And next thing you know, bam, January came. I was depressed. It was difficult for me to show up. My whole demeanor just kind of shifted. And I wasn't able to get the job. It's still devastating to me. Having a mental health disorder, something I cannot control. I think a huge part of the stigma is the idea that mental health is different, so different from physical health, where we don't have this stigma. We have so much grace for people that experience a physical health disorder, whether it be cancer or diabetes, because it's just so, I guess, easily understood for people. But for mental health, it really was something I couldn't control. Mm-hmm. It was something that I got on medication for and ended up doing a lot better later on, but it's cost me some of my professional relationships, definitely with my family members, not agreeing with me being in treatment at all. I was told that I should just go to church. Takia also experienced this, like, go to church. I think they told her to speak in tongues for like 20 minutes a day and her depression would just go away. Yeah, my mental health disorders, I feel like it's very, very expensive and not just necessarily financial and how much it could potentially cost you just because it's so misunderstood.
Mm-hmm. Jordan, today we're talking about the Beyond the Stigma, Black Voices on Mental Health. And undoubtedly, the African American community is considered a minority, not only here in DC, it's around the world. And it's undoubtedly leading to ask you, do you believe mental health services are accessible to the Black community? Why or why not?
This is a question where I always have to step back and remind myself that I'm a resident of Prince George's County, Maryland, which is predominantly African American, and it is so much easier for me to find a therapist or find services for people that look like me. But I always have to take a step back and think about our friends over in Western Maryland or the Eastern Shore in Appalachia, in the Midwest. I think accessibility has increased a lot with the help of virtual services, but I still think there's a lot of room for growth and improvement for making mental health services accessible in the Black community. And I think a lot of that goes into actually letting people see like Black faces. I think that's what makes Black people die by suicide too so powerful and receptive to people, because I mean, our entire team just about at this point right now is African American. We're very, very transparent with our mental health struggles. I think the messaging that, hey, this happens to us too, let's talk about it, goes such a long way. And I think there's a lot of room for growth, even in Prince George's County. There are not a lot of therapists worldwide, especially in the country, that are African American. And I know that can pose a barrier for people who are looking to get into treatment, because there's a lot of nuance, and we appreciate people who are culturally sensitive to our needs. I definitely think that mental health programming still has a long way to go for us with expansion, but I think with the help of peer-led organizations like Black People Die by Suicide too, I think that'll help bring more people in and make more people comfortable and receptive to receiving any type of treatment.
Mm-hmm.
An organization as Neighbors Consejo too. That's why we are talking together today.
Yes.
Yes, it's trying to work hand in hand to let the community, that organization as Black People Die by Suicide too, and others as Neighbors Consejo, and many others too in DC are working for our neighbors and are there for the people and are there for the African American community. That's so important.
Yes.
Taylor.
Thank you.
Yes. So Jordan, what challenges have you faced or do you think others may face in seeking professional mental health support?
Definitely accessibility. I know during the pandemic, a lot of people were reaching out for mental health or counseling services, and there were a lot of wait lists, especially for like trying to get in with a Black therapist because they are so few and far in between. Even if you are trying to reach services in places that are a little bit more diverse, like Prince George's County, DC, Montgomery County, Baltimore, there was still quite a long wait list. I've heard of people waiting for an appointment like up to 6 months, a year. So that definitely was a huge barrier. I also think that not all therapists or all providers accept insurance. So that can also pose a barrier. There are people out there who provide services on like a sliding scale, but I think this can help be mitigated by places like pro bono counseling. I know at the time when I first came back from Georgia, I would go down to the Center for Abused Persons down in Charles County, and I was able to see a therapist on a sliding scale fee. You either paid $1, $2, $3, $4, or $5 was the max. So you can find some cheaper alternatives out there, but it definitely poses a barrier because you would have to know where to look to get connected to those affordable services. I also think there's the barrier with the need for higher level of care, in that many people don't know what to expect if you do need a level of hospitalization, whether that be inpatient, whether that be partial hospitalization, which is where you report to the hospital, like usually from 8 o'clock in the morning to maybe 3, 4 p.m. So you kind of go like a job, but you're able to go home in the evenings and take care of your ongoing responsibilities. I'm right now in an IOP program, which is about 9 hours a week instead. Usually PHP is Monday through Friday. So you're there. It kind of feels like a full-time job, but you're engaged in treatment activity all the time. But those things can get very, very pricey depending upon what your insurance will cover. Of course, even if you have insurance coverage, a lot of times there's copay that can be a barrier for people, because you will have to pay a little something each time you do try to see a therapist. These are definitely some of the barriers that I've experienced. Again, I think it's gotten a lot better now, but I definitely remember my copay was $85 back in the day. And you see a therapist usually once a week. So $85 times 4, that adds up. So these are definitely some of the barriers that I've experienced and I've heard other people experience as well.
Jordan, historically, mental health issues in many Black communities have been stigmatized due to cultural, social, and historical factors. How does cultural background influence the way mental health is perceived and addressed in the Black community?
So I think this very common misperception that mental health crises, or especially suicidality, does not happen to Black people. So we would hear very commonly, I don't know if you've heard this, Taylor, but lots of people I've spoken to have that Black people were enslaved. Like, you didn't see them killing themselves, or you didn't see that happening back then. But that actually wasn't true. So I read The Power to Die by Terry L. Snyder. And in this book, she talks about the role that suicide and mental health played in slavery. And lots of enslaved people passed away from suicide, unbeknownst to us, because it's not something that we learned in school. Not something that you would get, definitely not from K-12 education. But in this book, she talked about a variety of reasons that people would consider suicide or complete suicide as a way of being free from being tortured, or going back to the ancestral plane and being reunited with your loved ones back on the motherland, or even just using that as a way of reclaiming autonomy over yourself. No one can control me. I get to control my fate, as opposed to being enslaved. So slavery played a huge part. I highly recommend anyone check that out. Again, that's The Power to Die by Terry L. Snyder. So that definitely was very eye-opening, because that was one of the main things that I heard. You don't see slaves commit. People love to say the word commit. I'm going to get to that in a second. You didn't see slaves commit suicide. And it's like, ooh, okay. Like that. I still have a mental health struggle. I still considered suicide. I don't know if they thought that was supposed to snap me out and make me feel more empowered or comforted, but it really didn't. If anything, it made me feel diminished or misunderstood in a lot of ways. I also think that language goes a long way, and it's not even necessarily a Black community thing. I think it's just an issue nationwide for all communities, and that the language that we use toward mental health and toward suicide. So for suicide, we say that people commit suicide, but nobody is committed to their death. When you think about someone who has a terminal illness, we don't say that someone is committed to cancer. They're not committed to diabetes. Why do we use this language for people who are considering suicide? Or even the idea of suicide being successful or unsuccessful. Why do we use those terms to talk about suicide? I think our language plays a huge part of it. I think even seemingly innocent things that we say, everybody's a narcissist now, or we'll say that the weather is bipolar, because 1 minute it's sunny outside and the next minute it's raining. A lot of these things play into the stigma around mental health. But that isn't just something that would affect the African American community, of course. And I also think that for us, religion also plays a bit of a part. As Takia mentioned, or as I mentioned earlier, Takia will always say that growing up, she was told to speak in tongues for 20 minutes a day and that would make her depression go away. But that simply isn't the way that mental health treatment works. I definitely think that faith is a protective factor. Having a belief in a higher power, these things can go a long way for helping people cope with their mental health. But even myself, right before the pandemic, I went to church and my pastor, bless his heart, he was on a roll. And I remember him saying that you don't need therapy, you don't need medication, you just need to get on your knees and pray. And this is the messaging that a lot of us are receiving from the church. So there's always been a bit of a rift between mental health treatment and religion. Mm-hmm. And the church tends to be one of our first go-to places that we'll reach out to in the community when we are struggling with mental health. But I do think that it's gone a long way. I've definitely heard of faith leaders out here who are leading Black churches, who are incorporating things like screening people for mental health and getting them connected to services outside of the church. So it's taken the tide, but I think that those are some of the things that really affect us in our community and will keep people from seeking treatment just because the stigma is so heavy.
Yes. Thank you so much. And thank you for the book. I'm definitely going to look that up afterwards.
Thank you. Sorry. Shh.
So, what role does financial barriers play in accessing mental health services? You did speak upon that, but if you could just expand upon it again, that would be great.
Sure. Insurance can be tricky depending upon, as I mentioned earlier, not a lot of places may not necessarily accept insurance. Even when you do have insurance, there may be a barrier for people as far as co-pays and as far as medication. But I also think what a lot of folks don't necessarily consider, again, if you do need a higher level of care, which I will always advocate, I strongly believe that inpatient treatment and higher levels of care have their place in the mental health system when it is needed. If somebody is in crisis and it is a life and death situation, I would rather that person go to the hospital and seek treatment than be left alone to consider or possibly even complete suicide. However, there's a lot that goes with pursuing a higher level of care. So I think about the people like myself who were involuntarily placed in the hospital, and you don't necessarily want to be there. You probably need to be there if you were involuntarily placed, because chances are you're experiencing something that would indicate that you may be a danger to yourself or other people. And so you're put there for your safety. But think about it, if you're in the hospital for 3 days, a week, maybe even longer than a week, and you're able to get discharged, next thing you know, you get hit with that bill. And that bill is probably going to be thousands of dollars. Or what about people that actually want to receive mental health treatment, but maybe they work a job that's hourly and they don't have any accumulated leave? Are they reasonably able to afford taking that time off to be in a day program? And their job is, I don't know, 8 to 4, 7 to 3 when you're supposed to be in the day program. Can you afford to get treatment that way? Will you be able to pay your bills if you're off for a week? And a lot of these hospital programs are like, whether PHP, IOP, some places can be as long as 9 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 weeks. Can you be off reasonably, even if you really, really want and need that level of care? I've been employed and had wonderful insurance and could not take the time that I needed to care for my mental health because I couldn't afford to be off that many days. So often there's a choice between, do I pay my rent? Do I put food on my table? Do I take care of my family? Or do I prioritize my mental health? And that's a very, very hard place to be. It can be very, very difficult to keep up with your work responsibilities or your home responsibilities when you're struggling from your mental health. But a lot of times that is a decision that has to be made, particularly for higher levels of care. I do think it's a lot better with the expansion of telehealth services. So people are able to, maybe you can go outside and do an appointment for like an hour in your car if you got a break from work. So that might help. But with the higher levels of care, there can be a lot of expense placed on mental health services. But at the same time, those services can be invaluable because they can extend your life. So it's a hard choice.
Yes, and the ideal scenario will be like not choose if you want the well-being in your family, in your job, in your friends, in your mental well-being. The dream will be like be okay in all the areas of your life, right? Jordan, at the beginning you shared with us about that long story short about your mother and your partner, family and friends, and we understand that family and friends play a vital role in this mental health journey. To be specific, how can community leaders can influence this mental health journey and how they can help to promote mental health awareness?
I think it honestly will take people like us. We've all gone through something, right? Whether we've experienced the diagnosis of depression or anxiety, we've all been through things that have made us sad or made us anxious. I think people having a willingness as community leaders, as people who individuals look up to, if they're able to be open and transparent about their experiences, that goes a long way to not only make people a little more comfortable to actually talk about their mental health issues, but also it goes a long way in just modeling what that even looks like. So, for instance, our organization has support groups that we offer for free to the community. We have a grant that supports, so people are able to just sign up and attend our support groups. And because Takia and I are so transparent, and so many of our people who join us have never been part of a support group, because they see us being transparent with our experience and being able to talk about how we kind of dealt with our mental health issues, it will literally make them feel comfortable to open up and talk about their own struggles. So I think it will go a long way for community leaders to let people know that, hey, this happened to me. Like, I know you see me and I look very successful, and on the outside, everything is put together. But behind the curtain, I am suffering. That will, or maybe not suffering. I'm struggling. Hopefully they're not suffering. But if they are, hopefully they're connected to some form of treatment. But hey, I struggle too. That goes such a long way in making people feel comfortable to even begin scratching the surface of talking about their mental health issue. And this happens a lot for people who are going into peer support, whether it's people like myself and Takia that have dealt with mental health issues, or people that are recovering from a form of addiction, and they get to talk about their story for the first time. And we hear all the time that that's such a freeing experience to actually tell other people about your struggles. And it's like a chain reaction. People will see it. People will know that it's okay. People will know that the world didn't implode because they told their business. Because that's such a huge thing in the Black community. Don't tell your business to those people. Don't let those people know what's going on in the house. You keep that in here. But once they see that nothing will happen, and that actually you will find that somebody else might not necessarily have the same exact experience as you, but they know what it feels like, and they can identify with what you're feeling and your struggles, it goes such a long way in opening up the conversation. So I think it would be helpful if people were more transparent, that have a platform to talk about their struggles with their mental health or with grief or feeling depression or anxiety, because it's something that we've all experienced, and it's okay to talk about it.
That's exactly how I'm feeling right now talking with you. So free, so close. This mental health topic is like
Thank you.
friend. This is what I think that it's about, talking about mental health issues.
Thank you.
Okay. So how can community leaders and influencers help promote mental health awareness?
Oh my gosh, there's lots of opportunities. So there's so many different dates and like campaigns and stuff that people can get into. I think making people aware, like, this is Women's Month here in March, at the time that we're doing this interview, and even just talking about women's mental health in the scope of this month, or Mental Health Awareness Month, which is in May. Suicide Prevention Awareness Month is in September. BIPOC Month is in July. There's lots of opportunities to kind of ride the wave or the trend, if you will, to raise awareness for mental health if you do have like that platform that you can get those messages out to your audience. Even with Men's Mental Health Month in June, LGBTQIA plus month, there's a lot of opportunities that people can raise awareness in the community and actually make it fun. I know mental health is such a heavy topic, but it doesn't necessarily have to feel that way. You would think us having these support groups would be like the most miserable experience, but we all just kind of come together and commiserate about this. Oh my gosh, suicide. Oh, we have a blast in these groups. We do. We have a blast in these groups. We find connection. We laugh together. We cry together. We celebrate triumphs and overcoming things together. You can make it fun. You can make your message tailored to whoever your audience is. If it's kids, if it's adults, if it's people who are elderly, if it's the Afro-Latino community. There's so many different ways that you can tap in and let people know that, hey, this is something that we can all talk about, and it doesn't have to be a miserable experience talking about it.
Yes.
Exactly.
Jordan, we know that it's impossible to approach mental health issues in the same way for everyone because we are all different. What kind of mental health resources do you think should be more available for to the Black community?
I definitely think that for people who are Black and hesitant about clinical mental health treatment, and don't get me wrong when I say this, because mental health treatment will always be the gold standard to me. There are things that therapists and psychiatric nurse practitioners and psychologists and psychiatrists can do that I and Takia simply cannot do. However, if you have some apprehensions about it, try a support group, y'all. Like, it is worth, whether you join one of our support groups. The National Alliance on Mental Illness has support groups. BDSA, Depression and Bipolar Support Alliance has support groups. Wildflower Alliance has support groups. There's also, I guess, kind of niche support groups, if you will. So I've been attending a lot of neurodivergency ADHD support groups because I also struggle with that. I know that's not a mental health issue, but still just finding like those opportunities to connect with people who are experiencing something similar, just to get a taste of what it's like to connect to a recovery community would go such a long way. Because it's probably going to break down a lot of stigmas or biases that you may have toward mental health treatment on the clinical side. So if you're afraid to talk to a therapist and you attend something like a free support group, because pretty much I think everything that I've mentioned, NAMI, DBSA, our groups, most of these support groups are free. You can hear other people's experiences with how close they are with their therapist and how much their therapist helps them, how much trying medication has helped them. It'll kind of get people, I guess, to be a little bit more recovery minded, if you will, and make you realize that you're not alone in this. So I feel like peer support and support groups in general are a wonderful thing to start promoting in the Black community, just to even help break down barriers for connecting people to clinical treatment. Because ultimately, again, I love a support group. I do. It is my favorite thing. However, there's so many things that I cannot diagnose you. I cannot get you medication. They do things that I don't, that's outside of my scope. I'm always going to suggest that people get connected with a therapist, and at least start there. But if you're a little hesitant about that right now, you don't have to be out on your own. You could try support group. It'll help even get you in the right direction of what you could possibly do next if you do want to take your recovery further.
Yes.
Thank you for stating that, because you're also educating me as well. So thank you. So, what strategies can be implemented to reduce stigma around mental health?
So education programs, things like mental health first aid. There's mental health first aid for youth and adults. There's a lot of suicide specific trainings as well, like question, persuade, refer, which is QPR. There's safe talk. There's assist. But mental health first aid, I think, is a really, really great place to start because it will teach you about some of the basics of mental health disorders, how mental health can impact your day to day life, what can be done to support people who are struggling with their mental health. You'll learn some strategies on how to kind of cope with your mental health on day to day in your day to day life. But I think it goes a long way to even just learn what mental health really is and what it has the potential to look like. It will go such a long way in breaking down so many barriers. And chances are you will become more interested and curious, like, oh, I see some of these things in myself, but you just didn't know that it could present that way. I think it's worth it to at least, if you take nothing else, try mental health first aid. You can find people that offer mental health first aid for free. I know Takia has another organization, the Mental Health Empowerment Agency, where she teaches mental health first aid. It's a great place to start just to even learn the basics of mental health, of suicide, how you can support people. Um, and that goes a long way to break the stigma. I haven't heard, I know quite a few people who have taken mental health first aid, and I've never heard anyone say it was a waste of time. I think their certification is good for like 3 years as well. So you'll also join the army of mental health first aiders.
Yes.
There's lots of us out there. But mental health first aid is through the National Council for Mental Well-being. So you can actually check that out. I think the education programs go a really long way to help break stigma.
Jordan, finally, what advice will you give to someone in the Black community that is struggling with mental health issues?
Oh, you're not alone. Even if it feels like there's no one for you to talk to or there's nowhere for you to place these feelings, you don't have to do this by yourself. Seeking treatment is probably one of the strongest things you could ever do, one of the most beneficial things. And you'll be surprised how much your life will turn around. And I don't want you to feel discouraged because I'm someone who is in mental health treatment again now as I'm talking to you. Recovery is ongoing. There's always room for improvement. There's always more that you can learn about yourself and your mental health. And if you're struggling and if you're considering suicide, talk to somebody. You don't have to carry this by yourself. You're not weak. You're not incapable. You're not a moral failure, not a personal failure. You're somebody who could use a little bit more support, and that's okay.
Jordan, thank you. Thank you so much for opening your heart today, for talking with us about your experience and the experience of building this great community that is Black people die by suicide too. We
Thank
really
you.
appreciate your time. Undoubtedly, today we talk about the need for open conversations, breaking the stigma, and of course offering support to family, friends, and community leaders here in DC and all over the world about mental health. Jordan, we know that we will talk in more often, but for now, please let us know your social media accounts so then people in DC can follow you and the Black people community die by suicide.
Yes, so Black People Die by Suicide too. That's TOO. You can find us on Instagram. We're on Facebook. We're on LinkedIn. You can also go to our website, www.blackpeoplediebysuicide2.org. Again, that's TOO. We would love to connect with you. You can sign up for our newsletter on our website so you can stay abreast to all of the things that we have going on and coming up in the community. We're going to be doing some in-person events here in the DMV, so we would love if you all would get connected with our social media to stay on top of that. If you want to come and check us out and meet us in person, you can find me on Instagram. I never post, but it's okay. You can still follow me. I'm the late bloomer, and that's bloomer with 2 U's instead of O. So that's B as in boy, L as in Larry, M as in Mary, ER. I'm on there, but I hardly ever post anything. But Black People Die by Suicide too, you can definitely follow us there, and you'll also get Takia's social media information in mine. We would love to stay connected with you and meet you out there in the community somewhere.
Thank you. Thank you
Yes.
so much. I
Thank
don't
you
know
so
if you
much.
want to say something else.
Oh gosh. I'm very grateful that you all wanted to connect with us. I'm grateful that we were able to make this happen. And I want to thank Neighbors Consejo for everything that you're doing in the community to promote mental health.
Thank you, Jordan.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a
Woo,
good one.
jeez, almost got me at the end.